So our main news for you this morning, and the Prime Minister is planning a bonfire of EU laws, reportedly in a bid to show off the opportunities presented by Brexit and, of course, move on from the whole Partygate issue.
Well, the initiative is going to focus on cutting EU regulation on the environment, farming, transport and tax, with Cabinet Ministers reportedly hoping that the changes will allow Britain to then outcompete European countries.
Well, details of the proposals are going to be revealed alongside the Brexit Freedoms Bill, first announced in the Queen's speech. That bill is intended to make it easier to repeal or amend existing EU law and will lead to the cutting of £1 billion worth of regulation.
Well, the new push comes after polling from YouGov over the weekend revealed the Prime Minister could lose his seat at the next general election, alongside other large-scale losses.
OK, well, let's get reaction now from Sunil Sharma from the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, who joins us now. It's great to see you this morning, Sunil. First and foremost, on this sort of bonfire of EU regulation, what do you make of that? Because, I've got to be honest, we voted for Brexit, it's happened. We do want to see what the difference now, don't we?
Good morning. Yeah, for sure. I think, looking at what's happened over the past couple of years, I think it's important that we do start to see some of the benefits, the opportunity Brexit offers. I think we're moving towards, it seems, maybe sort of more of a Singapore-style regulation system where it is a lot easier for other countries to trade with ourselves. So I think it's a step in the right direction, and maybe something that's long overdue, because a lot of people are waiting to see the benefits from Brexit and how that can have an impact. And speaking on some stuff that we do in terms of the Commonwealth, I think there's an opportunity for a lot of these Commonwealth nations, like your Indias, your Canadas, Australia, New Zealand. So I think it's a step in the right direction.
Talk us through what you think Boris Johnson's motivations are.
I'm sure the recent polling figures probably would have had some impact onto it. But I think that would have played a massive part, as well as the fact that I think as we're moving forward, and he's got 2 years before the next election, I think people do want to see the impact that the Brexit is going to happen, the things that he's going to be offering. I think it works quite well with the general. I think that this week, in terms of the Queen Platinum Jubilee, maybe he's looking at this as an opportunity to really kickstart a new kind of phase post Partygate, and I think all these sort of factors definitely play a role in him deciding to make this decision now in terms of axing the EU regulation. I'm sure it's been something that's been in the pipeline. I'm sure it's something that they've been working on for quite some time, and I think it's good to see that it's finally coming into some fruition.
Right, what do you make of this £1 billion price tag? Yes, they reckon we'll save £1 billion in sort of regulation costs. Now, of course, at the moment, when we need all the money we can get hold of, I mean, that could be a very useful amount, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think the sum of money sounds great. I think I look in terms of more the opportunity it can bring by removing this red tape. We've seen how much difficulty it is to trade with the European Union, even since we've left. The Canada deal took over 7 years. It can be a very difficult block for countries to deal with. So I think it's great that we're saving that £1 billion. But I think in terms of opportunity, I think that's where we'll see the greater return and a greater opportunity, because the EU is known for its red tape, is known for its difficulty in regulation, in onboarding other countries to do trade, and not just trade when it comes to other factors as well. So I think although the £1 billion is great with what's going on in terms of cost of living crisis, I think it has really good opportunity in terms of the money it can generate from removing the red tape.
There is certainly a lot of opportunity. Where do you think there might be danger zones in very quickly changing lots of legislation?
I think on existing partnerships, on existing agreements, I think there is still a massive push from a lot of companies, a lot of organizations that would like us to stay as tight and as close as possible with the European Union. And you'd hope that doesn't have a further negative impact on what's going on in terms of the cost of living crisis. So I think in terms of a lot of lobbying firms. I think you may see some difficulties there who will look at this as something that they won't be too keen for. So I think that will be a bit of a difficult period. Or potentially with sort of some of these more Remain places, as we kind of, I think as people hit the realization, if they haven't already, that there's almost no going back from what happened in terms of the referendum. So I think these are all going to be sort of areas of concern. But I think in general, it's a progressive move. It's a forward move. I think a lot of people probably would have hoped it happened sooner. Especially when it comes to dealing with other countries in agreeing with trade deals and being able to establish sort of closer ties. So I think some of the issues for sure I envisage there'll be quite a few lobbying firms and quite a few companies that won't be too pleased with the changes in the regulation.
Look, what do you make of this polling information about Boris Johnson's constituency, saying, as the figures stand at the moment, he could lose his seat when there is the next general election? I mean, look, there's going to be an uprising of feeling against the Prime Minister. There's going to be a lot of focus on trying to get him out of his seat. That's how it works in general elections. But, I mean, it's several years away. It seems a bit daft in a way to be looking at that sort of data at this stage.
Agreed. I think, looking where he's based in terms of Uxbridge, classified as London, I think Conservatives generally, as we saw in the local elections, are going to struggle in London, and they have been. And I think you're completely right in terms of saying 2 years away is such a long time in politics. And I think for all of some of the issues Boris has had, one of the things he is very effective at, and he's shown this with his back-to-back mayor wins and the 2019 election, he is generally pretty good at winning elections. I think that's the question of him in terms of us in governance, in terms of leading a country as a prime minister, is very different from winning elections, which is something that he generally has been very strong at. I think 2 years is such a long time to really make these kind of assertions. I think he has a very long time in terms of being able to build up some of the trust that he's lost from Partygate. There'll be a lot of people, I think, that won't move on for it. But I think the bigger challenge is the cost of living crisis. This is something that affects pretty much every single person. So that's why I would be judging, I think, his performance a lot more in the coming year or two.
How much of this do you think is just sort of midterm dissatisfaction?
I think you can definitely attribute quite a lot of that to the midterm sort of dissatisfaction. I think there's no doubt Partygate has had an impact. I think going forward, this is where I think he will be tested. I think the cost of living is definitely something that I think will be impacting his performance. I think when you see inflation at its highest point since 1982, you see household bills being on average 20% more in the last year. I think when it's affecting each and every single person like this, I think these are the things that will really affect him. I think the Ukraine situation, I think, will actually help him in the sense of, I think it shows him as a sort of strong leader. So I do think some of it is the sort of midterm 2 year kind of slump that you expect. And considering what's happened and some of the criticism got, being 2 to 3 points behind, I don't think is really that catastrophic or is really massive alarm bells. That said, I think the thing that will really, I think, ultimately decide how much that changes will be what's going on now in terms of the living crisis. I don't see Partygate really continuing to have much of an impact. I feel like that sort of impact has happened. And I think now going forward, it's what kind of alternative Labour can actually show. What does a Labour, what does a Labour in power look like? I don't think they've really come across yet, and really probably done enough to really hurt Boris Johnson. I think for him, it's this rebuilding kind of this phase, and I think this is something that he enjoys. To be honest, I think this is where he kind of almost revels in that kind of underdog kind of mentality.
OK, Sunil Sharma from the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth. Thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you.